Here we go is another solving inequalities lesson. You'll see the objective. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to solve two-step inequalities. So just like one-step inequalities, the rules are the same. It's just like an equation, except if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to label my constants and variables. So this is a constant. Here we have a constant. And then this x over 8 would be considered a variable term. I'm going to draw my line down the middle just like I did for equations, and I'm going to label one side for constants and one side for variables. Since I only have one variable, the x, I want all my variables to be over there. So now I'm going to look for things that are on the wrong side. I don't want any constants in variableville, so I'm going to get rid of this negative 8, and the way that I do that is by adding 8 to both sides. Negative 7 plus 8, different signs, it's 1. I didn't multiply or divide, so I can definitely keep this how it is. These two cancel out, and then I have x over 8 left. Now I basically just have a variable left, and I need to get rid of that dividing by 8. The opposite of dividing by 8 is to multiply by 8. So I'm going to multiply by 8 on both sides. Since this number that I actually multiplied by is positive, I know that I'm not going to flip my inequality. This is the number that matters. So it's not positive. I'm going to go ahead and just multiply to get 8. This stays how it was. This 8 and that 8 cancel out, and so I just have x left over. Now at the bottom you have your number line. 8 is in the middle. We might have something like 10 and 6. I know that I need to have an open circle. Remember, if there's no line, it's an open circle. And then I'm going to read starting with the variable. So this says that the x's are bigger. Do you see how that's the big side of the arrow? So I want the x's that are bigger than 8. Well, the x's are bigger on the right, so I'm going to shade to the right, including the end of my arrow. Great. Alright, here we are on problem number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and start by labeling. I have a constant. I have my inequality sign, so that's where my line goes. This has a letter attached to it, so that's the variable. And then a constant. Just like we do with equations, I'm going to label my constant side and my variable side. And then I'm going to start looking for constants or variables that are on the wrong side to get rid of. So the first thing that I see here in variableville, there's this constant of 4. So I'm going to subtract 4 on each side. Subtract 4. When I do, I have a positive 130 minus 4, so that's just regular subtraction. I get 126. Keep my inequality. I didn't multiply or divide. And then I have 7p. Now, to get the p by itself, I'm going to divide by 7. So I'm going to divide by 7 and divide by 7. The way that I figure this out is I know that something divided by 7 is something that had a 6 in it, and so I automatically think of 56. So I'm pretty confident that my answer is 18. And since the 7 was positive, I'm just going to keep my inequality the way it was, and then I have a p. So again, my variable is on the right hand side, which is fine. You just have to remember then that you're going to read backwards. So this kind of inequality, it's a greater than symbol. It doesn't have a line underneath, so I know that my circle is going to be open. So I'm going to go ahead and put an open circle on 18. And then I want the p's that are smaller. Do you see how that's the small side of the arrow? So I want the p values that are smaller than 18. And the p's, or the letters, the numbers, are smaller on the left. So I'm going to shade to the left. Alright, question number 3, and then we just have one more. So this right here is a constant, and then on this side, remember this is the special one because I have this troll under the bridge that I have to get rid of. So because I have that under the bridge, I have to undo that first. So I'm still going to draw my inequality sign, but I can't even really label my constants and variables because this guy is holding the variable and what will be the constant hostage, so I have to get rid of him. since they're dividing by -2, I'm going to multiply by -2. Keep your sign. So on the other side, I'm going to multiply by -2. Well, -2 times +10 is -20. And did I multiply or divide by a negative? This time I did, so I have to flip my inequality the other direction. Do you see how it was greater than, and now it's less than? These 2's cancel out, so I have x minus 4 left over. Now, if I wanted to, or if I needed to, I could label. See, here's a constant, a variable, and a constant. When you get to the point that you can recognize these without labeling them, then the labeling isn't as important. But judging from your quiz from last week, a lot of you really do still need to label. All right, to get the x by itself, since they're minusing 4, I'm going to add 4 on both sides. And here I have different signs, a -20 and a +4, so I'm actually going to be subtracting. And when I do, I'll get -16 is less than x. So now I'm going to go ahead and draw my arrow. I'm going to put -16. I'm going to pick a number that's smaller, and larger, which is really the opposite of what I just said. Since there's not a line underneath, it's still going to be an open circle on 16, and I'm going to shade where the x's are bigger, because it's the big side of the arrow. X's are bigger than -16, and they're actually bigger on the right, so I'm going to go ahead and shade to the right. Shade to the right. All right, last question. This one looks a little bit different than some of the other ones that we've seen, and I'm actually going to show you 2 different ways to solve this. So the first thing is, anytime I see parentheses, I automatically start thinking about the distributive property. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute the -8. -8 times -8 is +64. Then I'm going to multiply -8 times r, which will give me -8r. Keep my inequality and keep the -96. Nothing else happened. I didn't do anything on both sides of the equation. Okay, now I'm going to separate, draw my line down the middle. I'm going to label my constants and my variables. I want to keep the variable where it's at, and I want to move all of the constants over to constant city. So to get rid of this +64, I'm going to have to subtract 64. So then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. When I bring this down, I'll have -8r. Keep your negative sign. I saw a lot of people miss those on your quiz last week. I'm not multiplying or dividing, so I can keep my inequality just how it is. And then here, since I have the same sign, I'm actually going to add these together. 6 and 4 is 10. Carry the 1, and I'm going to have 16. And then I'm going to keep the negative sign on there. Now my last step to get the variable by itself is to get rid of this -8. So I'm going to divide by -8, divide by -8. Keep the r, 8's cancel out. Did I multiply or divide by a negative? I did. This number down here is a negative number, so I'm going to flip the inequality the other way. And -60 divided by -8 is +20. And the way that I got that is 16 divided by 8 is 2, and then I just put the 0 back on. So now if I want to graph this one is set up at least facing the right direction, so that's always helpful. I'm going to put a solid circle. Because of this line underneath, I'm going to have a solid circle. So remember to color in your circle. So solid circle on 20, and I want the r values that are smaller, so that is to the left. So shade where the r values are smaller, and there will be your graph. Okay, this is question number 4 again. It's the exact same problem. I'm not actually going to, there's not really any change, but I'm going to show you another way to solve it. So one thing that I can do after I split my equation in half, since they're multiplying this whole side by -8, so they're multiplying the whole side by that, I can divide the whole side by -8. So an 8 is like held hostage there if it's attached to a plus sign, like this 8 right here is attached to this plus sign. But this 8 is all by himself, so I can get rid of it by dividing by -8, which means I have to divide by -8 on the other side. These, of course, cancel out, and so there's no more 8 out in front, and I can bring down negative 8 plus r. Do I need to flip my inequality? Yes, because this number is negative. So I flip my inequality, and then 96 divided by 8 is 12. Now I just have a really simple one-step equation. To get r by itself, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And when I do, I'll have r is less than or equal to 20. Same answer that we had on the other side. And then just to review, if I want to graph it, I'm going to put a solid circle on 20. And I want the r values, or the numbers, the set that is smaller than 20. So that means I'm going to shade to the left. And there is how you solve two-step inequalities. Go ahead and finish the rest of the worksheet, write your question and your one thing you learned, and then we'll be ready to go over these in class tomorrow.